And I remember sitting at the very top in Vegas of the MGM Convention Center and thinking to myself, this is a cult. Hey, I'm Kendra. I'm 34 years old, and I was in Arbonne for 4 years, 2 times.
4 years, 2 times. Oh,
Yeah,
no.
the rest of them the first time.
How old were you when you were recruited the first time?
So the first time was in 2013. That would have been mid, early 20s.
Okay.
And I was in for a little over a year, but I did nothing. I joined because I wanted the friends. So I would go to the meetings that they had and just hang out with the girls. And then the second time, I like didn't sell anything. I think I maybe had a launch party with
Right.
like my really close friends. But I did not network. I did not sell. I didn't do anything. I did use the products and I did like the products. It's hard to imagine nowadays, but I struggled with really bad acne
Mm.
for the majority of my life. And the products fixed my face, which was a big deal for
That's a good
me.
testimony. That's a good
I will say they weren't like the end all be all. I've since found much better products, but over the years. But that was the first thing that I had ever found in my life that actually like helped me. And so I was kind of a walking billboard, I guess. Yeah.
totally. So they have skincare products as well as like their health products.
Yeah. So back then they actually didn't have or I think they had just launched them. And the business was a lot different than it is nowadays. It was much more old school. You get together in somebody's house and
Right.
have parties, that sort of thing. We weren't doing social media, we weren't messaging people or doing anything like that. And that whole idea I never saw anything wrong with that because growing up, I had gone to pampered chef parties with my mom, and her teacher friends and had a good time at those when I was younger. So I didn't see that it could be such a predatory industry.
Right. So you were in it for 1 year after
Mhm.
joining the first time. Then you went
Yeah.
off and
That was in Southern California. I lived out there for many years. And then I moved back to Texas. I'm from Texas. Moved back to Texas in 2016. And at the very end of 2016, I rejoined by my own volition. Like I reached out to my old upline and said, hey, I want to do this. Sign me back up.
got it. And so what made you want to, was it because you were working an evil job that you wanted to go back to being a boss babe?
Yes, it was.
Oh no, fuck. What
Um,
were you doing that you hated so much?
so I worked for iHeartMedia,
Okay.
which you know who that is.
Yeah.
They own all the radio stations and stuff. I worked at their headquarters in San Antonio in accounting of all things, which is probably the saving grace of how I got out without doing more damage to myself because I was an accountant. But the company itself is just not good. They don't care about their people. They were paying us trash wages, um, overworked, underpaid, the whole thing.
Mm-hmm.
And when I moved back, I was making way less money than I was making in California when I had left. And I had gone from bartending, customer service, that sort of thing, where I was always in front of people and I loved people. And then sitting in a cubicle, working for iHeartMedia, crunching numbers all day, I missed that. And so I wanted to do something with
Right.
sales.
Damn. Okay, so you actually did have an evil job. It's not even like an ironic.
Yeah. No, I went to them at one point and I was like, hey, you have me managing all of these accounts, the biggest ones, New York, Chicago, our largest customers. I was in charge of those, and I'm getting paid less than this lady next to me who doesn't even do her job, and I do her job too. Like, give me a raise. And they were
Right.
like, We want you to see this as an investment in your future.
Oh, shut up.
It doesn't pay my bills, man.
Yeah.
Working at that job, I was making about 25 to $35,000 a year. So
That's
it was rough.
terrible. That's really bad. For
Yeah, it was,
accounting too. Like they need that. It's like an
yeah.
essential thing.
They
God
did
damn.
not see like the value in anybody. So
Gotcha.
yeah, the idea of rejoining a company that saw value in their people was definitely enticing to me. And my upline, um, who I had known from California, she had moved across the country, bought a house with her Arbonne money. She got the or not the Cadillac, that's Monet. She got the Mercedes. And so I saw all of the success that she was having. And I thought in my head, well, I know what she's doing because I was there a few years ago. I can do that too. And yeah, I was wrong.
So you moved back from Southern California to Texas to
Yeah.
do, and the lady who was your former upline, she was still there.
We had known each other in Southern California. She had moved to Massachusetts in those like couple of years in between. She had relocated. I moved back to Texas because that's a big long story for a
Yeah.
different time.
Okay.
But I'm from Texas
Sure.
and
Okay.
I knew that I wanted some sort of career. I didn't know what it was because I didn't want to bartend for the rest of my life,
Right.
basically.
And so she was able to start you back into the business from where she was. You guys didn't have to be in the same geography, right? She just gave
Yes.
you the code and you signed up under her and whatever,
Yeah.
whatever. Got it.
And
Okay.
then we would do the Zoom meetings or, voice notes, but we didn't see each other very often.
Right, right. So I just want to clarify something. You said you were in Arbonne twice. Cumulatively was 4 years, right? You didn't do 4 years and then another 4 years for a total of 8 years.
Correct.
Okay, so I misunderstood. Okay, so when you got back into doing Arbonne after working in a cubicle for however long, it must have been nice to actually get back around people and stuff, right?
It was. Yeah. I fell face first into it and like fully submerged myself into the brainwashing and trying
Right.
to enjoy just like being around people and um yeah, in hindsight it's weird. I actually have an unlisted video on YouTube that I had sent to one of our nation's meetings because they wanted me to speak virtually. Our entire crew, or the majority of our crew, was in Wisconsin, of all places. So my like nation was all up in Wisconsin, which I did end up going to uh, Madison a couple of times for events there.
Yeah.
And they had asked me to make this video for our monthly meeting. And I actually had to record it twice because the first time I didn't say what they wanted me to say. So I have two versions on YouTube and I rewatched them this last week and it like hurts my soul.
Was it about how Arbonne was so amazing and changed your life and brought you all your dreams and how did I
Yeah.
guess that?
Yeah. And
Yeah.
how you should share it with everybody and how special it is. And
Yeah. So, but this time around, when you rejoined Arbonne, you were like, actually, like, I'm gonna make the money off it this time. I'm not just gonna like go chill. So, how did you go about that? Obviously, we know it's a recruiting machine. How did you
Mhm.
go about prospecting people, and what was the effects of that prospecting on your relationships?
So I knew exactly what I was getting myself into. And I just started reaching out to everybody,
Mm-hmm.
anybody and everybody. I felt like it was something that everyone universally could find value from. And so we were still doing a lot of like the parties at that point in 2017. And so I would set up parties. I invited all sorts of people. I recruited a couple of girls that were under me, some coworkers who were also feeling the misery of iHeart. And family members, friends, whatnot. And I was just gung ho, talk about it to everybody that you meet. And really, one of the things that bothers me the most in hindsight that I feel really ashamed about is the fact that I was seeing everyone universally as like dollar signs.
Yes.
And it's so inhumane. I am one of those people where when I meet anybody, I genuinely want to know who you are and I like want to talk to you. And having to shift my mindset from the trainings that they told me to sell something to every single person felt disgusting.
Yes. Did it feel disgusting in the moment or in hindsight?
Both.
See, this is one of the things where I think it's a big problem that MLM is legal, obviously for countless reasons. I could go all day. But one of the things that I observe is, and I'm not a psychiatrist, I'm not a psychologist, but when somebody has no empathy, when somebody is unable to look at people and relate to people emotionally, and they are antisocial, that is the clinical definition of what might traditionally be called a psychopath or a sociopath. And that's why I think network marketing, as they call it, multi-level marketing, as I call it, because that's what it is, multi-level marketing is such a fertile breeding ground for people who are sociopaths or becoming sociopaths or people who were already a psychopath to begin with, because they really do train you as a recruit to look at everyone as a commodity, a number. And that is the opposite of building a genuine human connection. They'll tell you, be genuine, be relatable. But if you have to tell someone, be genuine, it's not genuine. They're telling you, what they're really telling you is appear genuine so that you can lower their guard and then get them in. And
manipulate them.
Yeah, and it really is spooky. Yeah. I have come across people, and I am very careful in my videos to not label people unless I feel that I've really done the research on them to know what I'm talking about and back that up. I believe most people who push multi-level marketing are victims of this brainwashing. But if you are so high up in the system, if you are so high up in the hierarchy, like you're at the top where you're actually making money or you're one of the founders of it, that means that you've been in it to witness the scale of how many people leave from one year to the next, how many people lose money, which you might not be able to observe if you were at the bottom and you only had 2-3 people under you. If you have 3 people total in your downline and one leaves and you replace them, it doesn't, it's not a huge deal. But when there's 100,000 people in the company and you're at the top and you saw 60,000 of them left and were replaced in the last calendar year, that means you know what you're doing. And I have observed people who are at the tops of companies that I've researched who I would say, in my non-professional civilian opinion, they are psychopaths. I would say that, yeah.
I think that's a heavy term, but I totally understand what you're saying. One of the red flags, there was a few red flags that led to me leaving finally forever, but one of them was a comment that my upline made to me about the team that she had when she got her Mercedes was completely different than the team that she had 1 year later.
Right.
And that registered in my mind. And I was like, that's a red flag. So no one's here that was here before.
And nobody that's here this year will be there next year, likely.
Right.
And
it honestly, I don't know if I can go with like I do believe that there are psychopaths in the industry, but it hurts my heart that I think people get stuck in it. So with a few people that I knew in Arbonne, they had been in it for so long and were so entrenched in the world, the money, like that is how their families survived. How do you go out and change the trajectory of what you're doing after being in a company for 10 years
Mm-hmm.
and try to get a real job. Like, how do you do
Yeah.
that? You can't put that on a resume.
Yeah, that's a great point. That's a great point. I think the real struggle with that isn't even so much trying to adapt back to work life, because in MLM there are some similarities. You are still dependent on a company as much as they tell you you're independent. You have to wait for them to pay you. You don't pay yourself. You have an upline. You have many uplines, as a matter of fact. You have superiors, which is no different than in a traditional work environment. I think the real struggle for people who have been in MLM so long is a sunk cost fallacy, where because they have been in it so long and they've told everyone in their life about how this is the vehicle that's going to take them to a million or 10 million or whatever, it's more of a social prison that they've put themselves in, because it's like, how do I, not even so much about going back to a job, but how do I swallow my pride and like look everyone else in the eye after saying this was going to be the thing, and now I'm going back to working a job? And also, how do I go back to not having this community of people who I've considered my friends and family for so long? It's like you have to choose one of two struggles if you've been in it that long and you're in it that deep. The struggle of continuing to lose money and, you know, ignore red flags and not feel right and all these weird emotional things, or choose the struggle of having a complete identity crisis and having to revert back to being a regular human being after you've been, you know, there's the term hun bot, after you've been a hun bot for so long, you know?
Yeah. The whole deprogramming process is long. It takes a long time.
Yeah. And so for you, what was this like final straw? You were in it now 3 years this time around, right? So what was it for you that you were like, okay, I'm out and I gotta deprogram? And
So the final straw for me, I went to the conventions in Vegas that they put on every year, and there was a number of red flags that came up where I was like, this seems weird. I got really upset that the company decided to change their skincare line to a completely different one, which screwed over this girl who had just signed up with me. She had spent like $500 on, her startup pack. And I knew that my upline knew that they were just going to rebrand everything, and she was getting old product that she wasn't going to be able to use anymore. And I was like, why would you not say something? She just wasted $500, and it's because she wanted the revenue. So that one, the comments about her team cycling. And then that was the year that Mel Robbins spoke. And I remember sitting at the very top in Vegas of the MGM Convention Center and thinking to myself, this is a cult.
just one day.
This is a cult. It's weird. People are sitting around crying. This is not normal. And so I went home because I was in the spring. I think it was February or March. I needed to do my taxes from the year before. And I sat down and I itemized every single expense for that year, because I also had my what is it, W-9 from the independent contractor. I had made $4,000 that year, which is not very much, but seems good when I'm only making 25 to 35,000 with my other company.
4,000 net?
$4,000 was what I was paid from Arbonne.
Not including your expenses for products, traveling to Vegas for the convention, all the other
Oh, just
shit.
wait. Oh, just wait. I'll tell
Oh
you how much.
no. Okay, go ahead.
So that's how much Arbonne paid me out, which is not a lot of money. Honestly, that's sad. But when you see the income disclosure statements, I was doing better than 88% of people,
I think
89%.
99.
Like, I actually was getting paychecks. So $4,000 it came from Arbonne. I spent in that one year, in 12 months, I spent $22,367, which means I lost $18,367.
So you lost almost the full year's amount of what you'd earned with iHeart.
Pretty much.
Closer to that number.
I did all this math before. I'm not a genius, I promise, guys. I was living on $18,633
For the whole year.
And I do remember I was about $11,000 in credit card debt. So a lot of that went on credit cards.
Of course.
And when I did the math, it was instantly obvious for me that I just couldn't do it, that it wasn't gonna work. So that was the big difference.
Were all of those expenses Arbonne related expenses, or are you calculating your total expenses for everything that you could write off?
All of those expenses were Arbonne related expenses. I couldn't write off all of that. So I had gone through and I pulled all of my bank statements and credit card statements, and I went through and highlighted line by line by line by line every single thing that I knew was attributed to a trip, or me traveling to Vegas, or me buying products that included the products that I was buying myself, which you can't write those off. And then I had to go back through and actually figure out like what can I write off the trips. And I also had been tracking my mileage that year to try to recoup some of those costs. So driving to parties and from parties, and if I have to buy snacks or whatever, that sort of stuff.
How was the revelation that you were losing so much money only visible to you after you had done the taxes? Is it because when you were in Arbonne, you were getting some money semi-regularly, so it helps to sort of ignore the amount that you're spending? Like, for example, I have to imagine you feel it when you book a trip to Vegas, because flying is not cheap, hotels are not cheap, Ubering around, food, it all does add up. Anytime I do a trip, I'm like, oh, this is gonna sting. So how like in those moments, how do you not realize, I'm losing money overall doing this?
I think that I knew that I was losing money.
Okay.
I think that I was making excuses about it. I'm investing in my future. This is what I have to do to get my business up and going. This is just normal in the scope of owning your own business. You have to lose money the first year to make money later. And it goes back. I was so insulted when iHeartMedia told me, think of this as an investment in your future, when I asked them for a raise. But that was exactly what I was telling myself that entire year, which is sick.
It is sick. Yeah, it is sick.
I know a lot of people ask, how do I get my friends out of MLMs? Since I've gotten out, I've had a handful of friends who have joined different MLMs. And my good friends have reached out to me like, hey, look what I did. Remember when you did that Arbonne thing? Now I'm doing it too. And I'm like, okay. But they usually ask me for my opinion. I never give them unsolicited advice. And the biggest thing that has helped all of them is me just telling them to watch the money that they're spending and explaining to them my situation.
Right.
And so I always just ask my friends, keep track of how much money is going in and how much money is coming back to you. If you do make money, cool. If you're not, just know that that's what it is. That's what MLMs are.
Yeah. And so, Kindra, the money that you lost, you said that 18,000, was that just in one single year? Because you were in it 3 years. So I'm guessing you didn't even look at 2016, 2015. You didn't have the stomach for it. Yeah. Yeah. No. Yeah.
Or the time, because it took me about 8 hours to go through and figure out my scheduling and all of my bank statements and all of the everything, because I wanted it to be accurate. Yeah, that was 1 year, which it was the year that I was all in, super committed, and really committed and hustling
Right.
with it. So I don't think any of the other years would have been worse. But
So the idea that you didn't work hard enough, which is the thing they all love to say, what do you think of that?
part of the issue with MLMs in general is that you have to completely live, breathe, be all consumed with it. And that year was the most exhausting emotionally for me year of my entire life, partially because I was having those visceral reactions of this feels wrong, this feels weird, I don't feel like myself, I'm trying to be something that they want me to be because that's how you be successful in, you know, this industry. And so the concept that anybody doesn't work hard enough at it, I think is appalling. They go into the idea of, oh, well, you're not asking enough people, you're not having enough conversations. And I did all of the things. I had all the conversations. I put myself out there constantly. I was completely committed to the process. And I had negative success.
What kind of time commitment would you estimate that you were giving to Arbonne in that all-in 2017 year?
I probably shouldn't admit this on
You admitted
because
the
I did have a
financial
full-time
loss.
job at the time. Um, I would say, do you want just because they break it down between like income producing activities and just would
Right.
you
Did you
want?
say also that you were working a job at that time, or you didn't
Yeah,
say that? You were working a job at that time aside
I
from
was I
Arbonne.
was working at iHeartMedia
Oh, you were
during
working
that.
at both at the same time.
Yes,
Ah, okay. So this is an important detail that I missed. So you were funneling all the money from iHeart into Arbonne.
all the money. Yeah.
Yeah, but you get me.
Yes. Yeah.
Interesting. So the iHeart job was basically just supporting the Arbonne hustle.
Exactly.
Got it.
That's
Okay,
all.
so okay, that sort of does alter my question, I guess, because you still had to work the mandated job hours at iHeart. Well, then
Mhm.
also then in the
But
eyes of
there were times that I was killing two birds with one stone.
I see.
I would use, my breaks to
Yeah, right.
follow up with people or jump on calls, training calls, that sort of thing. Have it in my earphones as I'm, working
Right.
on whatever. So there were a lot of times that I was doing both at the same time. And I also would spend a ton of time trying to brainwash myself into oblivion with toxic positivity and um, self improvement stuff, which I think that self improvement is great.
Right.
I see, they disguise it as self improvement. They don't want you to improve yourself. They want you to become more entrenched in their philosophy.
Right, right. Yeah, I mean that's a great point too about the self-help industry is that if they actually heal you, if they actually satisfy your need for the improvement and you've improved, now you're no longer a potential customer. I think rather
Yeah.
what they want you to do is improve infinitely. I don't think it's that they don't want you to improve. I think it's that they want you to improve infinitely and they teach you your mindset can always be improved and, you know, things of that nature. So, um, is it fair to say that all your free time that wasn't working at your actual job was going towards Arbonne?
Yes.
Okay. And the other thing is too, I know this will annoy you, but the Arbonne boss girlies watching this would probably think, "Oh well, she said she was all in, but she wasn't really all in if she was working her job."
Yeah,
If
but
you were really all in, you would have quit your job.
they also sell you the idea of, oh, it only takes about 8 hours a week. You
Of
squeeze it
course.
into the nooks and crannies of your day and whatnot. But then once you get in and they ask you, okay, what do you want to make out of this? And you say, I need to make money. They're like, well, then we need your life and your firstborn child.
Exactly. Yeah. 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 That's the thing. They'll start by telling you it's such a great part time opportunity. And then they'll tell you, well, if you really want to go far in this, what you're going to need to do is X, Y, and Z.
Yeah. The
So,
double speak is absolutely appalling in hindsight because every single thing that they say as a fact at one point, they will backtrack and then switch their position in a different scenario like a week later. And it drives you insane because you're taught to just say yes to everything.
of
Like
course, everything's a loose metaphor. Everything is just, I call it mindless motivational babble. It's just babble, you know? Like I was saying on my stream recently, I've done this bit before where I go into like, I say, I right now, just from all that I've seen from the MLM people that I've studied, all the hundreds of hours of presentations that I've watched, I truly believe that right now, if I was to go step on stage at an MLM convention, I could give one of the most profound mindset trainings that they have ever seen off the top of my head because it's just so cookie cutter. Like I have it down now just to a second nature where I could just turn on this character of being like an MLM guru because it's that simple. It's just nothing. They are
can you
experts.
imagine if you did that as one of your undercover missions?
I mean, I think I would be found out way too soon before I actually had the privilege to go up on stage because getting up on stage would mean I have to actually join a company, give them my money. Thus far, I've been able to do all of my research, all of my infiltrations without actually spending a penny, and I'm hoping to keep it that way.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, I mean, thanks a lot in large part to the shutdown. Everybody was doing it on Zoom, so I didn't really need to be vetted. All I needed was the Zoom password. That was easy enough to get. I mean, people DM me quite often sending me Zoom passwords saying, hey, this is happening at 6. Check it out. So, and then from Zoom, I just turn my camera off. How do they know? So, you know, and
Yeah.
with in-person infiltrations, it's getting a bit trickier. Like having to, I'm not quite at the point where I'm wearing like a fake mustache and prosthetics, but I did like in the last one wear my sunglasses and wear my mask over my face, and I'll have to probably wear a hat, glasses, and a mask at the next one to cover my entire head. But so
That's just gonna come with more notoriety.
definitely they all look like I live in Edmonton, and a lot of the infiltrations that I've done have been in Edmonton, of course. So locally, especially, I'm like the boogeyman. Like I've had people from Edmonton offices of like World Financial Group tell me like they showed us your picture and said like stay away
Wow.
from this guy, and like told us if we saw your video, like they made up all these rumors about you and said don't listen to this guy. So
Do you ever run into any of the people from past videos, like just out and about?
I ran into one guy from my first World Financial Group video, the one who came outside who said he was the CEO, and I told him to bring Hartage outside. I saw him one time at the mall, but he didn't say nothing to me. I mean, what are they going to say? These people, I'm really not worried about like reprisals or violence happening to me from these people, because while I do think, like I said, the top people are potentially sociopaths or psychopaths, they're cowards as well. These people are doing what they're doing, scamming, because they are afraid of hard work. Fighting
Yeah.
somebody, getting into a real confrontation is hard work. So, I don't think it's congruent with their
Mission.
MO on a daily basis. So,
Yeah.
okay, so let's
Yeah.
get back to Arbonne here.
All right.
So,
All right. All right.
okay, so you're at the convention in Vegas. Everybody's cheering and clapping and crying, and you realize this is a cult and I want no
Yeah.
more part of it. And so, what was the next step? How did you go about trying to unravel the past 3 years of.
I after I crunched the numbers and uh, figured out how much money I had lost, I kind of silently slipped into the darkness. I didn't say bye. I didn't tell them I was quitting. I just stopped showing up. And I think a lot of that was because I was so shocked and at that point ashamed that of the realization of the reality that I had put myself in, that I didn't feel like I owed it to them to tell them, yeah, this isn't for me. And they never came looking for me either.
That's crazy.
I'm still, we'll see if I'm still friends with them on social after this, but I'm still friends with a lot of them on social media. Um, and my upline did reach out to me a couple of times throughout the years, just, hey, we're changing things up. We do things different now, blah, blah, blah. Or there was one message that she sent me in 2020 that I thought to myself, this sucks because I know she's going through all of the old consultants that she used to have, asking them if they're struggling with finances and work through 2020. Because I don't still have the message, but it was something along the lines of, I'm just checking in. I know a lot of people are
Yeah.
having a really hard time this year, and a lot of people lost their jobs. And I really genuinely do think that she's a good person. I don't want to make it out that I don't feel like that, but I can see it from the other side how predatory that is.
Mm-hmm.
And she was completely dissatisfied that I was doing great, that I still have my job and that I didn't need her. And I haven't talked to her since then.
Yeah, these companies prey upon people's vulnerability, and that's the best time for them. I mean, you're no exception. Every single person I've ever talked to, whether it was on this series or privately, has told me that they only joined the MLM because of some desperate situation. Nobody, I think I'm about to sneeze.
Bless you.
No, I'm not.
I cursed you.
You did. You really fucked me up. Nobody that I have spoken to has told me that they joined an MLM because things were going great. It's always the opposite. And in your case, you quietly disappearing and nobody hitting you up was probably only possible because of your geographical distance.
Oh, yeah.
So that's
Yeah,
actually a benefit in hindsight.
absolutely. And I do think that she had somewhat of a suspicion after our Vegas trip because that was when everything was starting to kind of click. And so I do think that I may have made comments around that time that would have alluded to the fact that I wasn't happy with how things were going.
Totally.
One funny thing that happened in 2020 after the anti-MLM movement started blowing up and we all started watching videos, you started making videos, with the guilt and the shame that I felt in retrospect, I felt like it was my duty to reach out to all of the people that I had tried to recruit or recruited in the process. And so I would spend my evenings going through and messaging those people, looking at my message history, who did I try to, get on a call or whatever, and thanking them for saying no to me and telling them what I had realized in hindsight and how sorry I was that I was preying on them in that situation and that I genuinely didn't think that at the time, but now I know better and all that stuff. And so I hope that doing that will stop some of the friends that I didn't get in later.
Totally. No, that's a good thing. That leads me to sort of what I wanted to ask as well is like, how did your experience in Arbonne affect your friendships that you did have either with people who didn't join with you or people who did? Were there some bridges burned or was everybody for the most part understanding and forgiving?
I'm going to tell you about a specific situation. So I had a really, really close friend that she was on my dream team. I wanted her to be on my team and I thought she would be great when I was in there. And after I left Arbonne, she joined Arbonne with some other random girl that she didn't even know. And the residual feelings that I viscerally felt when she first told me of she was supposed to be in my team. She was supposed to be under me and I was supposed to make that money. Still happened for like 6 months after I had left. And I hated that version of me. And the fact that I would ever feel like that or think like that or have that sort of reaction with any sort of friend, family member, or anything, the resentment that I would feel towards people that wouldn't support me in my business was disgusting. Like, it's more internally me beating myself up than it ever was externally. People gave me a lot of grace and forgave me pretty quickly. And I got a lot of, I'm glad you got out. We were a little nervous there for a second from people. So I'm very fortunate that I'm surrounded by a bunch of great people who know who I am despite the mistakes that I make along the way.
That resentment that you felt towards those people, it wasn't because you, obviously you know this now, but it wasn't because you were a shitty person who looked at people as a commodity. It was because in these companies, they will brainwash people into thinking, they'll say things like this. I've heard this a million times. I'm looking at you in the audience right now. You're wearing a Nike jacket. How much did Nike pay you to wear that jacket? Nothing. So you guys see your friends and family, they're out here promoting brands that don't care about them, don't pay them nothing, they're expensive, and they go advertise them for free. But if you start a business, nobody wants to support you. I've also seen things like infographics that say like, when you graduate school, or when you go to university and take on a bunch of debt, everybody claps and cheers. When you sign an expensive mortgage, everybody claps and cheers. When you get married, even though the divorce rates are so high, everybody claps and cheers. But when you start your own business, people don't believe in you. And so they start to make you think that anyone who doesn't support your business is like an enemy and a traitor. And it's just madness. I mean, if you worked at a restaurant and somebody didn't come to eat at your restaurant, you wouldn't care probably as much. Like,
right.
Nobody goes to bat for a legitimate business the way these people go to bat for a company that is actively losing them money. Think about that.
Well, and the biggest thing, it's not your business. If it was a small business, your friends would be there in a heartbeat, but you also wouldn't be trying to sell all of your shit to them.
Or hire
You would
them.
have some other product that you were, selling that. The whole concept that they still say it's my business really pisses me off because of you have zero control. You don't have any say so in the products that you're selling, the prices that you're selling them at. You don't have any say so in anything. They just tell you, here's what it is. And they constantly change them to something else and they rebrand it as new and better and whatnot when the old shit wasn't broken, but they do it so their consultants keep buying more product because now they have to get the new stuff. I'm still very convinced that that is the only reason why they change products as often as they do. Because they have to figure out a new way to get the consultants to buy more product.
That's one of the things I have a big issue with is the term independent business owner. It is absolutely misleading. Every single word of independent business owner is misleading. You're not independent. You're completely dependent on this company and organization. It's not a business. It's a money transfer scheme where you are supposed to lose money, and you're certainly an owner of nothing.
Right.
It would be equivalent to.
In my case, I was the owner of a bunch of debt.
Exactly.
And lotion.
Yeah. That's another thing is you probably ended up consuming more than you sold to begin with. But hey, it did help with your skin, as you mentioned, and so that's good.
Yeah, I mean, it was.
But you probably didn't need to pay $20,000 for that.
I would have a whole new face.
Exactly. Yeah.
Go look like Kim Kardashian.
Yeah, you could have bought a new face. That's so true. Yeah, I mean, to say you're an independent business owner because you're in an MLM where you're a contractor, a 1099 contractor, is like me saying that I am a business owner when I was 19, I delivered pizza. I was a 1099 contractor at a pizza place. It was one of my earliest jobs. I was a kid. It'd be
Yeah.
like if I said I was an independent business owner of a food transportation, product transportation service for a large national corporation, and I just made it sound as fancy as possible.
Yeah.
Except even that would be less misleading than the term
Right.
independent business owner.
Exactly.
Well, I'm really glad that you, aside from financial, like, I think the even more harmful losses that people suffer are the losses of their friendships and relationships. Like, I've talked to people who say, older people who say, I signed up into, this MLM because my daughter was in it. And now because I've left, she has cut me off, and like I have grandchildren and she won't even let me see the grandchildren. And it's like becomes this huge violation of people's personal relationships, and then there are innocent victims who are collateral of that, like the grandchildren in this case missing out on seeing their grandparent, and vice versa, is just an unnecessary victim. Because of what? Because somebody didn't want to sling lotion or protein powder or insurance
Yeah.
from you. It's madness.
I'll tell you, this was probably the strangest relationship um situation that I got into. They had a lot of opinions and advice about my boyfriend at the time that I was dating.
Can I guess
Sure.
that you shouldn't be with him because he's not in the business and doesn't support you, so he doesn't see the vision and da 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 da?
Somewhat.
Okay.
He wasn't supportive, but he also wasn't, he was kind of supportive. He wasn't like trying to get me to quit, but he wasn't actively involved. And they had a lot of opinions about if we should stay together or not, which is sucky.
Yeah.
We're not together. But that had to happen on its own time.
That's another thing too, which is such a huge ethical overstep of MLMs. Even them from the jump asking you, what is your why? Well, any other job would never ask you that. If another job said, what is your why? Why do you want to work here? Because I need money and you are hiring. That's it. Anything beyond that would be deemed unprofessional and, over the line. You'd be overstepping and acting in a way that is just completely unprofessional. You wouldn't do that. And yet, in MLM, they'll ask you not only these questions, but they'll get you to trauma dump and overshare the most personal shit about your life. As, it's like, that's the person that you're fighting for, is the person who was abused. And it's like, so, mind you, you're hearing this from people who are not therapists. They are not professionals of mental health in any regard.
Right.
They're just a guy or a girl selling lotion and posting Facebook quotes and things like that. They're nobody. They're just people. And so, imagine your employer, if you worked at the bank, telling you, oh, your husband's not happy with the interest rates at the bank, you should leave him.
Right.
It'd be insane. You'd be like, sorry, what the fuck did you just say? Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
it's not your place. It's not their place. And yet they think that they have agency over their downlines' lives. They use these words, mentor.
They definitely collect information to weaponize it later down the line, which is shitty.
Of course, man. And all of that stuff, like if it's on video, if it was on live streams and whatever, they could have a copy of that. And so that could be used for blackmail in the future if you ever speak out against the company, and on and on and on. Or if you try to, if you tried to say something bad about the company and they sued you, part of their evidence could be, well, look at this video from when she was in the company. She said it was the most amazing thing. And so she's just doing this so she can get money and, write a book or do a YouTube video or whatever. So
Yeah.
again, imagine a real business doing this, any of these things. You would go, okay, this is insane. But for these companies, these cults, it's just, another day. It's just business.
The closest thing to it for me is Scientology, with the way that they go after people. I want to talk to you about the juxtaposition of sales, because I work in sales now.
No, just go for it.
Okay. So after I left iHeartMedia and Arbonne, I started working for Caterpillar dealership here in Texas. Caterpillar machinery, big dozers, tractors. And I work in product support sales for them. And for me, it is comical constantly how all of this stuff that MLMs try to sell consultants is what we get for free and then some. And I don't think anybody talks about it. And I wish that more people knew like the different opportunities that are out there, because I really feel like if you're unhappy with your 9 to 5, you're at the wrong company. You just need to find a different company.
Give me an example.
Well, one, we get a base salary, so I get automatically paid no matter what. 2, I get reimbursed for my vehicle because I drive for work. I can work from anywhere that I want to as long as my phone is working. A lot of times I'm out on job sites, but I can be anywhere in the state of Texas at any point in time. I've actually worked from Southern California a couple of times. They don't care as long as you do your job. Last year, I won some awards from Caterpillar, so they're sending me to Mexico in May. And next week, in 8 days, well, I'll just say next week, I'll be in Vegas for Con Expo, which is a global construction, what's the word?
Expo.
Convention.
Yeah.
It's like the biggest global convention for construction. And they're paying everything for me to go. My flight, my hotels, my food. They're buying the clothes that I need to wear, everything. They're asking me to go to represent the company there, so they're paying for it. What else? Paid time off, insurance, simple things that should be like basic human rights, you know?
Yeah.
It's absolutely wild.
Right.
I wish that more people talked about it, because if you like people and you want to help people, you should just get into regular traditional sales. The biggest difference between MLMs and traditional sales is that with traditional sales, you actually have a product that people want. You're not selling to your family or friends. You have customers who genuinely need whatever you have, and you are getting paid constantly from your effort.
Yeah, you get paid. That's the key. You
Yeah.
get paid.
The customer or the company gives you leads. Shocking revelation. You have a customer base that you get to like build rapport with. With Arbonne, they constantly tried to convince us that we were in the business of helping people. You're selling this dream and you're going to help people succeed. And in my sales job now, I actually help people because my customers need their machines to run well so they can actually make money. Everybody's making money here. Nobody's losing money. Yes, they pay us for services, but then that goes into them being productive and being able to finish their jobs. There's nobody losing at any end of this.
Right. It must be refreshing going to that after being in MLM so long. And another thing too is with your job, it gives you all those things. And plus, it doesn't overstep its boundaries. I doubt anybody has asked you, what is your why for working for Caterpillar?
Somebody has asked me that.
Okay. Okay, so I take that back. I'm guessing somebody has not told you to break up with your significant other because they use John Deere instead of Caterpillar, or, you know, some example like that.
That is true.
And also, when your workday is done, you can shut the phone off. There's not somebody being like, no, you need to chase leads and prospect and go on Facebook and tell your mom.
They actually encourage us to do better at work-life balance. We work a lot. I mean, especially in the last few years with everything that's happened, Texas has blown up and construction has just been bananas. And our upper management, VPs, everybody is constantly telling us, make sure you're taking care of yourself. If you've been working, 40 hours by Wednesday, don't work the last 2 days if it slows down. Just take the time and, find the balance, find the ebb and flow. And they genuinely care about their people. They want us to not get burnt out, because if you finally reach the sense of burnout in any job, career, anything, you're useless to everybody. And they recognize that. And I just have to say, with the why thing, the only reason why they do ask us what our why is because they want to make sure that we're in the right position. So at Whole, my company, they are very big on making sure that you're feeling fulfilled in the job that you're doing, and also looking ahead of, what do you want to do next? Do you want to go into management? Do you want to, transition to a different department or whatever? And so they do ask questions like that because they're like, what makes you tick? Are you satisfied with what you're doing? What's your why? So it's not toxic.
Fair enough. Okay. So in a non-toxic way. Fair enough. Okay. Well, damn, that about covers it for me. I'm really proud of you getting out and being willing to share this. I think that's something that, the biggest difference between now and maybe 20 or 30 years ago, when somebody like Robert Fitzpatrick was trying to do this by himself, was that there was no social media. There was no people giving their stories, and they controlled the information. Now, one guy in his apartment making videos can have more reach than an entire company and be the first thing that pops up on Google or on YouTube when you search that company's name. That's really powerful, and I think we need more of that. So thank you for contributing to that.
Thank you for doing this for everybody. And I know that you're making a huge impact on, being able to prevent people from falling into things like this. And I really hope that there comes a day where people just automatically know that these are not good businesses. You're not going to find success in them. And that doesn't happen without you, your channel, and all the work that you're doing. So I appreciate you.
Thank you. Yeah. And I think it is happening because, back in the day, they used to say, we're not a pyramid scheme. We're a multi-level marketing company. Now it's gotten to the point where people, even their ears perk up and they see it as a red flag even when they hear multi-level marketing. So now recently I've heard them go, no, we're not multi-level marketing. And they say a new thing. So,
right.
Social
selling. Well, thank you so much for having me.
Yes, thank you.
Good to see you.
You too.
Talk to you soon.
Bye.